Hi, I'm Renee Williams.
And I'm Billy Thomas.
And welcome to this spooky edition of From the Woods Today.
Yes, our Halloween episode. Yeah. No, awesome. Renee. Love the music. Thank you.
I'm trying to make it
I know you are. You're always doing such a good job. And
we can do the creepy things from our forest today. And so we have several guests that are going to talk a little bit about some creepy things that you might, witness in our forest. So I think it's a really cool show.
Oh, yes, it is. And you've done such a good job assembling this lineup of characters, if you will, these presenters. We've got Dr. Jonathan Larson. We always love having him on, our resident forest entomologist here with us. Does such a great job all the time. He's going to be talking about some of the things that we see out in the woods. And I think he's asked us to stick around and kind of react to it, Renee. So that'll be a lot of fun as well.
That will be.
Yeah, looking forward to that. And then we have one of our graduate students is going to be with us, a first timer even, Mr. William Gibson. He's going to be talking about the Venus flytraps. Pretty interesting, right? So that's cool. We look forward to hearing from Mr. Gibson here in a little bit. And then we have Laurie Thomas. She's also going to be talking about some of the creepy things, but talking about some of the kind of more, I don't know, funny naming plants or maybe scary naming or, some
creepy trees, how they got their origin.
Yeah, with other plants.
It's interesting.
Yeah. And as she was talking about it, there's a lot of them out there. So, yeah, look forward to having Laurie on. Kind of a different take for Laurie, but really glad to have her. But we're glad to have you all with us. Thanks for being with us on this Halloween edition from our creepy things from the forest. We're glad to be with you all. If you have questions for any of our presenters, please use the chat function. And if you're on YouTube or you're a podcast listener, thank you. But you can interact with us via email at forestry.extension@uky.edu. But we're glad to be with you all today. And Renee, it's exciting, and I'm looking forward to today's show.
I'm excited about this show. I love the holidays, and so these, the Halloween, the Thanksgiving, and the Christmas, I always really get into them and try to give something a little different than we normally do. But anyway, so let's go ahead and get started. So Dr. Larson, if you'd like to turn on your camera, we appreciate you being. Oh, look at
Welcome.
Good morning, Renee and Billy. You would fire me if I did the whole talk like that.
No,
I wouldn't. I'd be like, that's too cool.
No. Oh gosh, takes me back. Yeah, good stuff. How are you, Dr. Larson?
I'm doing okay. I've prepared some stuff for you today. I love doing the creepy show. I find this to be a really fresh challenge every year. I try to not repeat myself when I do this for you. I know I did spiders, I think last year or a few years ago. Last year I did creepy true bugs. We've done a few different topics, and this year I guess I found myself sort of trying to go back to the center, down to the core of it. So talk a little bit about some of the reasons why we are afraid of insects, why you invite me to be specifically a part of the creepy thing every year, and talk about what that looks like. So I've called it spooky shapes and arthropods. When I say when I say spooky shapes, you can see the tarantula X-ray. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When I say spooky shapes, I'm not talking about we're going to talk about a ghost spider or a Frankenstein bug or anything like that. I'm going to talk more about kind of insect anatomy and the structure of their body and how that gives us the willies, basically. What it is about arthropods and insects specifically that just unsettles people and makes them feel a little creeped out by them. This is something that I think about a lot in my job. I do extension mostly, but I also have a teaching load. And one of the classes that I get to teach here on campus is cultural entomology. So I've presented on insects and how they ping off of human culture throughout the thousands of years that we've interacted and what that has meant for us and the insects and how that's kind of distilled down to modern pest management and everything. But one of the interesting things that you get to talk about when you do a cultural entomology class is just the symbolism that insects sort of have assigned to them by humans. And one of the things that shows up a lot in insects when they're used, especially in horror type media, is how often they're used to represent this archetype that some people call the quote, the other. This idea of something that is sort of diametrically opposed to our humanity. And then as a result, we're kind of casting ourselves against the other. And it helps us to say, we are good, we are just. This can have far-reaching consequences. Some people would argue that this is a really deeply psychological thing amongst people, that we use it to sort of create groups amongst ourselves and to
Mhm.
cast ourselves against one another. But within horror literature or horror comic books or movies or what have you, the other is often the like weird thing that they're dealing with. It doesn't necessarily have to be the antagonist, though it usually is, but it's something that's diametrically opposed to the protagonist's sort of innate goodness, or it's representative of like deeper insecurities and fears that they feel. And in some movies and things, there you could see the other represented by sort of abstract concepts, or you could see it represented by things like a ghost, or a werewolf, or a vampire, or a zombie. Sometimes you can see it as angels or demons, these kind of supernatural things that we can't understand. We can't fully sort of see the world the way that they see it because they're monstrous, and they can't see the world the way that we see it. And therefore, there is a clash. Insects pop up in this not infrequently because they're kind of a real life representative of what I would say is biological life that seems very otherworldly to us. There are animals on planet Earth that to our human senses, they're baffling. Like it's hard for me, the most evocative example is a jellyfish. Like I don't understand jellyfish, frankly. I don't really know what a
Get
jellyfish
that.
does. It's just a blob, right? Like I've been to the aquarium, I've seen beautiful jellyfish, but like the idea of life like that is so foreign to me. I can't really fathom what it's like to be a jellyfish. For a lot of people, insects kind of fall into that category, though.
True.
Insects are things that we live alongside of here on planet Earth, but they seem to have these alien lives. And you can see this represented in various ways. So, my examples here, these are three different sort of pulp fictional books from different areas. So, Adventures into the Unknown that you see on the left, this is from an American comic book. Amazing Stories in the middle is a pulp magazine from the maybe like the 30s or 40s. And then 2000 AD, this is a British publication that was like sci-fi and horror. And they still make 2000 AD, I shouldn't say was, but they all represent sort of different methods of sort of communication. The comic book, a pulp, and then kind of a magazine style. But they often use insects in these. And what I like about these three images, so one, when you look at these pictures, what is your eye drawn to first with the insects?
The bugs.
Right, but what about them? Like, what do you notice first and
They're
foremost?
trying
What
to kill you.
they're trying to get us, yes. And often, like in the middle of the image, it's
Yeah.
their eyes. You see their
Yeah.
eyes
Hmm.
staring back
Yeah.
at you.
Hmm.
And insect eyes are fascinating, but this is part of like the setup to what I'm trying to say today is their eyes are very different from ours. Like there is no pupil, there is no iris. They look kind of dull and lifeless to us because they're compound eyes. They're made up of hundreds or thousands of lenses, and they just don't express anything. The people that you can see in these images, they're showing various emotions, but the insects can't do that. They're not showing any emotion. They're being cast as this like otherworldly force that can
Mhm.
destroy us because in these cases they've been turned giant or they've been atomically irradiated, and so now they can kill us. But like they don't feel anything about it. And this is horrifying to us. And the idea that their bodies are just so alien and primitive to us, all of this plays into this the other. The bugs are constantly sort of posited as this anti-human, sort of anti-moralistic thing that we have to live alongside of. And there's a lot of stuff tied up in that. You could talk about pests and everything, which I will here in a moment, but I'd say that there's a lot of it that has to do with the way that they look. So sometimes horror just uses that. They just use plain old insects, or they may make them big, and they sort of say, like, oh, look how weird and creepy this is. Other times they try to inflict that on us. So if those things are so weird and creepy, it would be really weird and creepy if a person started to exhibit sort of the symbols and the body of an insect. So we see a lot of body horror type stuff where insect bodies are used to talk about kind of a loss of humanity occasionally, or an inability to access like human morals. This is kind of visceral. These two images, I like these. These are also from comic books. I do a comic books and insects lecture as part of cultural entomology, and I found these as I've perused the internet. And so on the left, we've got this guy. I can't remember what he's done exactly, but he's a scientist and he's meddling with things that he shouldn't be. And unfortunately, he's been inflicted with something. and it keeps causing his body to change. He keeps going in between all these different insects. He says it was a fly. Before that, I was a centipede. Before that, a beetle. And now he's this like, I don't know, horrifying skeleton caterpillar. I mean, Billy, if you woke up and you had your body was replaced with that, like, what would you think? How would you feel? Would you be happy? Probably not, right?
Oh,
His humanity is being stripped away, and it's being represented by this insect body. My favorite one is the one on the right. This is a comic book story where there's this gentleman. His name's Mr. Green. Mr. Green is very greedy. He's very money hungry. He can't keep a job though because he's kind of also a layabout. And he gets this job with a beekeeping scientist that pays really well because the scientist can't keep people employed because the bees sting them and then they leave. So Mr. Green starts this job. He's making all this money. He buys this new car. And as a part of his job, he's getting stung by bees all the time and he hates it. He tells the scientist, I think I might quit because I just can't handle this anymore unless you can stop the bees from stinging me. And the scientist, sort of apropos of nothing, admits to having an elixir, a serum that he has developed that he has drunk, and it stops the bees from stinging him. But he only wants to experiment on himself. He won't let anybody else drink this serum. And he tells Mr. Green, you can't have any. But now it's floating around in Mr. Green's mind, of course. So he breaks in and steals it and drinks it. He's committed a crime and he's gone against the wishes of his employer. And he drinks the whole thing. He drinks way too much of it. He goes to bed. He wakes up the next day. He comes to work. One of his coworkers is this woman that you see in the first two panels of this comic. And she screams when she sees him because dun dun dun, his head is turned into a honeybee head. Like he's paid for his crimes literally by having his body transmogrified. So your humanity is stripped away and replaced with this kind of ugly bugginess. And this helps to sort of posit how I would say insects are bad. Like insects are on the other side of us. And if you aren't human enough, you might become one of them. You can see this in other ways. So I won't just talk about comic books. I can talk about classical literature. If you've ever read The Metamorphosis by Franz Kafka, the illustration on the left is kind of from that. In the opening bit of this story, Gregor Samsa, the main character, he wakes up and he's become a monstrous vermin, is one of the translations from German. It's usually interpreted as he's become a cockroach. This drawing uses a beetle instead, but he's become this huge bug. And in the story, he isolates himself. He becomes really depressed. His family starts to hate him. They throw an apple at him, and it gets stuck in his carapace, and he slowly starts to get sick and die. And the author, and there's lots of interpretations. If anybody that's listening was like a literature teacher in a previous life, they probably have their own interpretation of this. But a lot of people interpret it as Gregor Samsa hates himself. Franz Kafka, the author, kind of hated himself. And what is a better manifestation of that than losing your humanity and becoming this huge cockroach that everybody hates? Like then it really validates all of these negative feelings that you have about yourself. So you can explore some of those themes through this. On the right, we have a more modern version of this. This is Jeff Goldblum's character Seth Brundle from the 1986 film The Fly. Have either of you seen it?
yes, it's been a
Okay.
while, but yeah, that was a
Bill.
good movie, actually.
It's a redo of, I think, a Vincent Price film called also The Fly. And this one is a lot more visceral. In this, Seth Brundle sort of sees himself as better than other people. That's kind of the crime that he commits is he has a lot of hubris and he's invented these teleportation pods. He uses them to like flirt with a woman at one point and show off to her. And it's successful then, but then the second time he does it, he gets trapped in there with a fly and the machine merges their genetics. And over time, his hubris is reinterpreted as he loses his whole humanity. He becomes more and more fly-like. He loses all his teeth and hair and fingernails, and he eventually becomes Brundlefly, this like big, monstrous, weird-looking creature that I didn't include because Renee tells me this is a family show. So I didn't want to horrify anybody too much, but he loses his humanity to his insect side because he was so willing to cross these lines. So all of these kind of body horror things are exploring similar themes to what I was saying with the other. This idea that humans are on one side of things of the equation, and then bugs are on the other side. And if you start to act more like them, you lose your humanity and you lose access to looking like something we would appreciate and having morals. I always have the big question of why. Like, why would we cast these organisms necessarily as diametrically opposed to us? And there are lots of schools of thought on this. You can meet some people or read some things that talk about like a genetic predisposition to this idea that we are all the sons and daughters of people that didn't truck with black widows or what have you in the distant past. And so our genetics are inherited from people who didn't mess with insects and spiders, and therefore we're genetically predisposed to not mess with them. So that's one idea. Other times people refer to them as just there's too many of them. There's too many insects. They have this numerical superiority. If any of you are dealing with box elder bugs invading your home right now, you may feel this. I have colleagues that I know. I was just talking with one of them recently, and she was describing going into a fly rearing room. And when you have flies that you're rearing for scientific purposes, you could have hundreds and hundreds of thousands of flies in an area, and the way that they would come to life, and there's you just know that there's a million of them. It really tickles something at the bottom of your brain that horrifies you. It makes you feel gross and dirty because we associate these things a lot with rot and disease. These are things that cause problems.
True.
They touch gross things in nature, fecal material, rotten vegetables. And so all of that is at play. But I also feel like there is something even more primal about comparisons between us and insects and arthropods. And it comes down to the way their bodies are put together. So when I talk to people, I do a lot of like master gardener trainings, or I talk to people on the street, or I just chat with folks about insects. And there are some things that pop up really frequently when they talk about why they don't like insects. And one of them is they don't like the way that they move. So, in the way that insects and their relatives move, they have more legs than we do. Insects walk in a tripod motion. That's what that cockroach is supposed to show on the side where it's moving there. Always have 3 feet touching the ground and 3 feet lifted in the air, two on one side, one on the other. They can do this very quickly, but it's often described as scuttling or creeping, and it doesn't look natural to us. Other arthropods, like a millipede, which you are seeing walking on the left there, they have hundreds of legs. The millipede, in order to coordinate the movement of those legs, moves them in a wave. Is this undulation that you see here, is this unnerving to either of you?
It's a little weird, yeah.
Because it keeps going. It's an infinite
Yeah.
GIF, right? But
Yeah.
also it's weird to see them move like that. We think of
Yes.
legs one in front of the other, and here you have this pulsing movement of legs. And that just, it's unsettling to us because it's foreign and alien to our sensibilities. Insects also go through really strange metamorphic processes that we
Wow.
find horrifying. So here
Gosh.
is a dragonfly becoming an adult dragonfly.
That
And
could
you
have came
both,
out of like Alien, right?
Right.
Honestly, that's what it made me think of was Alien.
you're both reacting to it. So what about it is alien? Like let's
Well,
unpack that a little
remember
bit.
the scene where the alien comes out of
Out of
the person on the
person.
table, and you're like,
Yeah.
oh, yeah.
Mhm.
Which
Ugh.
apparently that cast and crew didn't know was going to happen. That surprised them. They didn't tell
Oh,
them they were going to do that to them. And so it was genuine fear when it explodes from the chest of this other
oh, cool.
character. But yeah, I agree. The movie Alien uses a lot of these tropes that I'm pointing out about insects. I mean, that movie is about a parasitoid wasp, basically. It's about a giant insect with a stinger that puts its babies in other critters, and then they burst out of them. That's horrifying on one level, but the
Yeah.
way that they grow up to do that is also weird. Like this is a dragonfly. People generally are accepting of dragonflies.
Mhm.
Oh yeah,
They're
they're
interesting.
beautiful. Yeah.
You get tattoos of them, right?
Yeah.
I've met some folks with those. But this is how it goes from being a nymph, a baby, into its adult life. It has to pull itself out of its final exoskeleton from immaturehood and then become an adult. So the wings have to unpack and unfold. All those silvery things that you see pulled out underneath of it at the end of the video, those are breathing tubes. They have to yank out all of their old breathing and tracheal tubes in order to reharden new ones in the body that's coming
Wow.
out of the exoskeleton. This is a weird biochemical process. When I talk to people about this, I try to explain, like, imagine if to get from fifth grade to sixth grade, you had to yank yourself out of your back and like regrow all of your skin. That is the kind of horrifying truth that we see here. And people don't like to think about that. It seems weird and strange and horrifying. We could also talk about the way that the body is actually put together. Insect bodies are distinctly segmented. If you've ever held an insect and looked at it, the exoskeleton has all of these sutures in it, has these sort of, another word we use in entomology is invaginations, these like folds in the exoskeleton, this waxy layer all over their body. And that segmentation, it gets squished together to create the head and the thorax and the abdomen. And as a result, they look weird. They have weird shapes that pop up. Their mouth looks very mechanical. Their eyes are often sort of obscured by parts of these sutures and the antenna over them. So you can see a beetle's mouth on the right. That just doesn't look right to us. It looks very
It doesn't.
alien.
Oh,
No.
There's a lot of these kind of close-up images that'll float around on the internet, casting insects in this kind of evil light. This one has an interesting choice of like a halo-esque backlight to it
yeah.
that makes it look
Yeah.
kind of like a saint. But usually people see this and it just looks weird and hinged and unhuman. And as a result, it makes them feel unknowable, unidentifiable with. They're too different from us to be representatives of us. If you, I think I've never seen the Harry Potter films, but I think in them there's like these things that they cast that are called patronuses. I think it's an
Hmm.
animal
Yes.
Yep.
representation of the
Yep.
character.
Yep.
I'm gonna guess none of them have an insect. None of like they're deer and foxes and
Oh yeah.
dogs and
Yeah.
cats.
Yeah.
Nobody's got a longhorn beetle.
That's true.
Nobody's got a
Yep.
moth or something that's floating around because we just don't identify with these critters very much because of this alien appearance. The insect antenna also play a role in this. Antenna create these different sensory experiences that we struggle to comprehend. They smell differently than us. Their vision is very different from us. So that fly's eyes on the right, I mean, that's a very different way of seeing the world. All of those dimples are lenses that they're interpreting visual stimuli with. They don't smell through a nose, they smell through hairs on their antenna. They hear differently than we do. It seems like something we just can never fully understand their experience on planet Earth.
Hmm.
And I think that leads all to all of this like weirdness that we associate with them. And I wanted to conclude by, and I think I've got a little bit of time, right, Renee?
You do. I gave you 30
Okay.
minutes, so you're good.
Okay. I don't know if I'll take all that, but we I have some examples of things from Kentucky that I think show some of these exaggerated pieces and show some like weirdness that you could experience out in the woods. And
Hmm.
I'm going to start small and talk about earwigs. So I'll put it bluntly, earwigs have really strange butts.
Yep.
When we look at an earwig, you can see a male and female on the right. These are European earwigs, which are the ones most people are commonly going to find here in Kentucky.
Hmm.
These earwig rear ends, they have always made us nervous, and I'll talk more about that here in a moment. But when you look at that, they look like big pinchers. The males are more curved and they look more antler-like, while the females tend to be straighter. They use these for different reasons. They use these for different things. These are actually a type of rear tactile organ that other insects have. We call them circe, which is also creepy because Circe is a witch in Greek mythology. She's the one on the island that turns people into pigs, if I remember correctly. But in entomology, a circe is this rear organ on the back of the abdomen that's usually there for touching stuff. It's like a rear set of antenna. But with the earwigs over time, their circe became hardened and more sclerotized and longer. And now they use these to defend themselves and to mate. So typically, what they do is the males may joust with these. They'll use their circe to kind of like go after each other and flip each other wrestling style. But then during copulation, they'll also bend the abdomen around and use their circe to hold on to the female, and she'll also hold on to him with hers. So it's kind of a loving embrace with these butt antenna, butt antlers, and they use that as part of that process. Defensively, they can pinch with these. By and large, we tell people not to worry about this. I will fully admit that I've had an earwig draw blood on me. I reached into a tree hole once. I was actually I was an undergrad in entomology. I was a freshman, and my professor at the time, he had spent like 20 minutes telling us about earwigs and like they're harmless. We open this tree up, and he says, "Larson, reach down in there and grab everybody an earwig." So like grab a fistful of earwigs, and I reach down into this hole. I grip them and I start to pull out, and one of the male earwigs got to the tip of my thumb, and he pinched through the tip, like the top of my thumb, and like the circe touched underneath, and then I got him off, and blood was drawn. I didn't react very much because it wasn't super painful. It pinched, it hurt, but my professor thought this was the greatest thing ever. Apparently, he still talks about it to this day as like a legendary occurrence that he warns people about. So
Jonathan, the legend.
no,
Yes.
he doesn't use my name. He just talks about
Oh.
the freshman that had blood drawn by an earwig. But so don't worry about him too much. But that is something that they can pinch, and it doesn't feel great. These are some other circe just to sort of show what they typically look like. Cockroaches have circe. That's the one on the right. the rear tactile organs there that they use when they like bump into something that they're about to mate with, or where they're about to maybe put an egg, or where they're about to hide. Others on the far left, that's a silverfish or a firebrat. It's got these triplicate circi that they use for touching things. And then the other one is a mayfly. They have these long two-pronged circi that go usually longer than the whole body. They're either equal to the length of the body or greater than the length of the body, and it makes them look very elaborate. But the circi with the earwig are the most famous because of this sclerotization. Earwig as a name is pretty fascinating. It has ear in it, which is creepy, and then wig in it. There are two dueling myths here. One is that earwigs want to live in your ear, and this is something that's been present in in some human cultures for a long time, like the people that have lived with earwigs for thousands of years. This is a Middle English word, corruption. We call them earwigs. In Middle English, they were called earwicka. I don't know how to fully pronounce that because I don't speak Old English, but earwicka means ear creature or ear beetle. And then if you go to Poland and some other European nations of today, they also have similar common names for these that refer to the fact that they want to be in your ear. That's not true. This is a photoshopped image on the left. An earwig does not want to live in your ear. Your ear is gross. It's full of earwax. It's cramped. It's not easy to get into. Some of the myths that surround this say that they actually use their circe to bore through your eardrum, and then they want to get to your brain and they want to feed on your brain. None of that is true. As preparation for this, I actually found several YouTube videos where people were using this image on the left and other things to try and say some lies, some misinformation about, earwigs are out there. They want your brain. They're hunting you. It's unfortunate that this like ancient belief still trickles down today. I don't know what it is about them necessarily that makes people think they want to be in your ear. I don't think there's anything germane to them that says, oh yeah, this is an ear-dwelling creature. I can't lie and say that it's never happened. There have been earwigs that have been pulled out of ears before, but there have also been flower beetles, jumping spiders, bed bugs, cockroaches. Yeah,
Mhm.
your ears, there's a hole, and sometimes an insect explores this hole and then they get stuck. They can't get out. And you usually have to go to the doctor and get it flushed out. Real life, earwigs are scavengers. They can be a pest. They feed on fruits and nuts. They also feed on flower petals and leaves. If you ever have like weird, irregular shaped holes in the garden and you can't find a caterpillar or a slug to blame it on, it could actually be earwigs. There are different things you can do for this. Some people catch them out with a mixture of bacon grease and soap. They put these tin cans out with those in there and catch them. You can spray for them, but by and large, it's a rare occurrence that we deal with these in numbers. I will say that their order name is called Dermaptera, which means skin wing, which is kind of creepy sounding. And weirdly enough, when they unfold their wing looks like a human ear. It's kind of shaped like an ear. I don't know if this contributes to some of this mythology about them, but they're really cool. They have to fold their wings up really tight. They have really short wing covers above these membranous wings. You can see the brown things that have unhinged in the video. Those will fold down and flap down, and then the wing will scrunch up really tight under those little rectangles, and then they have to pop it out and unfurl it in order to take flight. And they can fly around as you can see here. But maybe that's part of it. They've got these weird antenna on their rear end, and then they have an ear shape for their wing. Maybe that's contributed to the earwig mythology, but I'm just not sure where that originated from. But it is prevalent across multiple European cultures. There's an insect that's kind of the opposite of the earwig. Instead of having these exaggerated antlers on their rear end, Dobson flies have really exaggerated mouths. So when we look at the two Dobson flies here, these are eastern Dobson flies, which you can find in Kentucky pretty easily. The male is on the left, the female is on the right. The male Dobson fly's mouth, the mandibles have adapted over time to be these huge sickle-shaped organs. They are a couple of lengths greater than the head. It makes their head look really funny. The females are much shorter. And this is a part of the mating process as well. You'll read various literature if you kind of parse through this. There are some people who say they fight each other with these. I have not witnessed that, but there are other people that say that they use this mainly to hold on to the female during the mating process. These are huge insects. They're up to 4 inches long-ish as adults. So they're pretty impressive. And when you see those big mandibles aimed in your direction, it
Oh,
looks quite
Wow.
terrifying. So this one is on the end of a stick over a creek. The other one is just, I think, at the edge of a meadow. If that was aimed at you though, like you're sort of like,
Gosh, yeah.
yeah.
I'm not gonna
That
mess
looks
with that.
like that comic book cover. I
Yeah,
mean,
right. Exactly.
yeah.
Yeah, these huge sickles that are aimed at you. The interesting thing about the male mouth is it's too big for them to actually use very accurately. They can't use it defensively. So it's not common that people actually get pinched by them. The
Hmm.
point of connection is so small that it doesn't hurt as much as it does with the females when they bite you. The female mandibles are much shorter and stouter, so they're very thick, and they can inflict a pretty powerful pinch. I don't know anybody that's had blood drawn from them, but it does hurt. It's not necessarily a lot of fun to get pinched by a female. But the male, he can't even eat. Like he can't do anything because his mouth is so big and warped. And I think that's kind of a horrific idea. This idea that you have a mouth but you can't eat with it. Just like that one horror story, like I have a mouth but I can't scream. It's kind of the same visceral, weird body horror that we can't understand. It also doesn't help that their immature form is weird. The Dobson fly immature is typically called a hellgrammite. That's what a lot of people will call it in Kentucky. They're about 3 inches long. This is one on a stone. They have big, powerful jaws that are grooved at the front. They also have interesting bodies with these tubes that stick off the side. We call them lateral filaments. It's part of their breathing method in this life stage. Their name, you can read it. It's got hell in it. It's also got kind of a corruption of grim. Some people say that it's a corruption of a word that means goblin in, I think, middle in Old German. And then there's another word that people, I think it's an Old English word that people say it's referring to, which is grimma, which also means bogey. Bogey has also been corrupted into bug. Bugs are called bogies in the past because they're associated with fairies and sort of the supernatural. Bogey to bug gets us to today, where we think of insects as kind of creepy and weird as we're talking about. So there is some sort of weird linguistic tradition here, and you can actually see it with other common names for these. I got this from Wikipedia. It shows kind of in the upper Atlantic and New England areas what people call them. So
Wow.
Dobson fly is a common name. Hellgrammite is a common name. In other places, Wisconsin, they call it the crawler, which sounds pretty evocative. The Andy, sorry to all Andys of the world. People call them black crabs, white crabs, flying crabs, scrabbles. That sounds kind of creepy. Molly grubs. Some of the other ones I liked are hell devils, the dragon, clippers because of the big mouths, conniption bugs, bogarts, hojack, devil catchers, the snake doctor. So you can see that these insects, there's something that's followed them throughout history and sort of indicated that they are creepy and weird. And I'm guessing it's because somebody, a colonist in the 1600s or 1700s, got pinched, and they've had this association ever since. The
And we had
last
a
in
comment. Someone
oh,
said they're great fishing bait.
they are
Yeah.
great fishing bait. So
Yeah.
I was going to throw that out. I forgot about that part.
And
All
called
the
Go Devils too here.
Go Devils. Yeah.
Go Devils. Oh, I'm gonna have to write that one down. Go
Yeah.
Devils. Okay.
Yeah.
So there's another devil word. Yes, they're great fishing bait. They're very famous amongst fishers for the use in that regard. And a lot of these names come from fishing communities. In fact, the entomologists that have tried to describe the etymology of the name Dobson fly and hellgrammite, they have to rely on old fishing club booklets where that's
Wow.
where these names first appear. And we see, I think they traced it all the way back to like 1636 for hellgrammite. And fishers, yes, the fishing people, the fishing communities are the ones that have sort of promulgated these names. It's fascinating to me. It's like a whole other hour-long talk, but yeah, it's amazing to me these communities that generate these names and propagate them for the future. I'll end with another insect that I think looks quite interesting. There's scorpion flies that fly around as
Oh,
well in Kentucky. Scorpion flies are really unique looking. They have really unique heads with these really long rostrums. They have kind of like a long mouth that looks very pinchy. And then the males are the ones that give the group their name because their genitalia are bulbous and tipped with a pointer, and they look like a scorpion stinger. They hold it kind of curled up over their body as well, just like a scorpion does. It gives them a bit of a wicked profile. When you look at them
Yeah.
from the side,
mhm.
they look like a skeletal horse with a scorpion tail.
Yeah.
It's not, there's
Yeah.
not a lot of ways to describe that other than that. And it gives them kind of a creepy aura. They're also found pretty commonly in the summer here in Kentucky. They're scavengers. They find dead insects or dead and rotting things and they collect them. and eat them. There are some groups of scorpion flies that seem to scavenge from spider webs, so they'll steal dead insects from those and then eat them. And then, interestingly, they've also recently been discovered as part of the forensic entomology succession. Usually, when you talk about forensic entomology, you're talking about true flies, horse or house flies, flesh flies, things like that. In this case, they found in like 2015, I think, that scorpion flies, they're some of the first insects that show up to a human cadaver, but they only stick around for about a day and a half. So it's an indicator. If you find scorpion flies on a cadaver, forensic entomologists can then usually feel very confident in saying, this is a fairly fresh corpse. This is somebody that's only been here for maybe a day and a half. Because after that, something dissipates from the body that they're no longer attracted to it. So there's something initially that comes out that they want to eat or smell, and they go to the body, but then after about a day and a half, they disappear. And I think that's fascinating. But of course, that's going to add to their kind of creepy aura. The last thing of interest with them is that they have a really ornate mating procedure. Scorpion flies, the male has a courtship ritual where he has to bring a gift to the female. We call these nuptial gifts. Usually it's food. They will gather something up and then kind of glom it together and give it to her. And that allows him to distract her so he can mate. As part of mating, the scorpion tail that he has grips the female, and then he uses his rostrum to hold on to her wings as well. He uses his mouth to hold on to her. And then that way they can complete the mating. Some males are a little trickier than others. They will use their own spit and they harden it into this weird gel, and then they give that to the female. It doesn't have any nutritional value, but she's still tricked and mated with. And those males are sometimes more successful than the males that expend energy to go out and actually get food and bring it to her in order to complete the mating process. So insects are crazy. They do all kinds of crazy stuff. I could have talked about these
Whoa.
things. That's a coromata. There's a feather duster that we see in some male moth. They pop this out. It spreads pheromones. It looks like terrible fuzzy Cthulhu tentacles. People hate to see them. They have that reaction that you just did. I could have talked about tree hoppers with their weird thoracic sort of ornamentation. They're peanut-headed bugs. That's a stock-eyed fly up in the right. Those are their eyes at the tips of those huge stalks. The wider your stalks, the more attractive you are to a female stock-eyed fly. That's a mole cricket, which looks a lot like a mole. There's lots of different weird forms out there with insects, but this is just a taste. I hope it's a happy Halloween topic for everybody. And thanks to you guys for having me on again. And I'll try to think up another good one for next year.
Oh, man. As always, Dr. Larson, those are so good. Yeah. Oh, man. Yeah, we had a lot of reactions from folks as we were watching too. So, yeah.
All right. So, our next guest,
a first timer.
A first timer. So, William, if you want to turn your camera on, he is
welcome.
He was doing something really interesting, and I was like, ooh, that I know that's not in our forest, but that could go for a creepy things for our forest easily. So let's tell the folks about what you're doing.
Yeah, so I'm a graduate student here at UK in the Forestry and Natural Resources Department, and I am studying Venus flytraps, kind of where they are, their environments.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very
so
cool.
Some of the bugs that we just talked about could be eaten. We were talking about that earlier. Jonathan said, yeah, a Venus flytrap might want to eat some of these bugs. So if you want to go ahead and start your presentation, that would be great.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Let me share my screen.
This will be really interesting too.
Yeah, yeah, William, thanks for being with us today. Appreciate you, buddy.
Yeah, of course. Let's see. Try to get this out of the way. All right, can y'all see that?
Yes.
Great. So the wonderful Venus flytrap. I wish that I had come up with that quote, but I can't take credit for it. It was actually Charles Darwin to originally call the Venus flytrap one of the most wonderful plants in the world. And I can't help but agree. Of course, I'm biased, but let's get right into it. So it's not letting me click there. There we go. So most of us are probably familiar with Venus flytraps from popular media, things like Little Shop of Horrors here, or some of us may be more familiar with the piranha plant from Super Mario. Both of these represent Venus flytraps as these big, giant monsters with sharp, toothy maws that will gobble up any unsuspecting passerbys if, they're not paying attention. But the reality is they're just not that scary. So why then are they famous? Why, if they're not dangerous, then they're not these huge creatures, why are they famous? Well, maybe it's because of their flowers. A lot of plants are famous for their beautiful flowers, and Venus flytraps are no exception. They've got these beautiful groups of white flowers that bloom in late May, early June. They are on top of a stalk that grows about a foot tall above the rest of the plant. And that bright white color really stands out against the rest of their environment. They're very beautiful. But I don't think that's actually what makes them famous. What makes them famous, of course, is the trap. And these fly traps here are actually modified leaves, and each plant has 7 to 8 each. This right here, what you might call the stem, is actually the pedicle, if I remember correctly, and it's actually photosynthetic. So Venus flytraps do get energy from the sun, just like most other plants do. Um, and then at the end here, where all the action happens, these are lobes connected by a midrib, and each lobe has these little hairs right here. They're kind of hard to see because they're so small, but those are called trichomes or trigger hairs. And when an insect or a spider or something else comes up and touches these hairs, usually it takes 2 or 3 attempts, but we all kind of know what happens. They snap shut. Now, this flytrap was pretty unlucky. It did not catch the spider, but when it does, and if that insect continues wriggling around and touching those trigger hairs, then over the course of 24 hours, it will completely seal shut, like you can see here in this time lapse. And then it will release a digestive enzyme similar to our stomach acid that will actually dissolve the insect from the inside out. And once the flytrap is done eating the insect and getting all those nutrients, it will open back up over the course of about a week and leave that exoskeleton behind. And that exoskeleton will get carried off by the wind and the whole process can start over again. So talking a little bit more about Venus flytrap management, like Renee said, they are not in our woods, unfortunately. They are only native to about a 100-mile radius outside of Wilmington, North Carolina. And that's the only place in the entire world they're native. They have been introduced some places, but other than Wilmington, there's nowhere else. And this area historically has seen a lot of prescribed fire and low intensity, high frequency wildfire, which Venus flytraps are super accustomed to and super well adapted for. However, in recent decades, this has kind of been suppressed. And so we don't actually see as much fire as we used to. And so Venus flytrap habitats are being depleted. On top of that, it being a coastal region, of course, there is a ton of development, and development just grows more and more every single year, which, of course, destroys habitat. And one final little punch in the face to Venus flytrap management is that they get poached. Now, when we think poaching, we usually think of animals, but poaching does happen in plants, especially these very charismatic plants like Venus flytraps. And in the case of Venus flytraps, they're typically poached for sale on roadside markets or online. That's not to say you can't get flytraps legally. You absolutely can. There are farms that grow flytraps, but poaching does take place and they're sold on roadsides relatively frequently in North and South Carolina. The news isn't all bad. There are certain organizations and certain government agencies working to protect Venus flytrap habitat, but they do have the odds kind of stacked up against them. And with that, I think I'm just about out of time, but I'd be happy to take any questions.
That was so cool. Yeah, I mean, I know I've bought them like, just at a grocery store or something. I can't ever keep them alive. I don't know. I mean, like, I guess, like, do you supposed to feed them bugs? I don't know. I don't do that, but
Yeah.
it never says to. So.
Yeah, they use insects to get some nutrients that they don't get from their soils, so
Gotcha.
especially nitrogen.
Mm-hmm.
So something like a lot of people say you can feed them ground beef, and you can, but they don't get quite as many nutrients from that as they would an
Gotcha.
insect.
Gotcha. Well, that was a really, really
Yeah.
cool topic. Really appreciate you being here. We didn't have any questions, but it was really cool. And I just
Yeah,
was like, when I
fascinating.
heard about it, I was like, oh, we got to put that on our creepy things from the
Uh,
forest.
yeah.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I appreciate
Yeah.
Thank
it.
you.
Yeah, William, appreciate it, and good luck with the rest of your studies.
Yeah,
Yes.
definitely.
Thank you.
Awesome.
Right.
Very cool.
Oh, coming up, Laurie Thomas is on, and I was asking her, I was like, "Hey, do we have any creepy trees?" And she was like, "Oh yeah."
Well, I'm not sure what I have quite as creepy as what we've just seen, because those were fabulous.
Yeah.
Jonathan and the insects, and
Yeah.
William and the Venus flytrap.
Yeah.
But we do have some interesting that kind of puts you in the mind of Halloween. Some of its names and some of it
Mhm.
has to do with what it might look like. But I'll go ahead and it's just a couple, and these are just a smattering. There are lots more, and I know many of you all can probably think of ones that I didn't share, but I'm just
Mhm.
doing a couple of them here today. So I called them creepy plants because we're not focusing just on woodies today, but some of their creepy plants. Let me hide that a little bit. So we will get started. We got an overview picture here of some of the creepy plants, and these are ones that we would find in Kentucky. So our first one is Devil's Walking Stick. So obviously the name that gives it that kind of creepy name. It's really its scientific name is Aurelia spinosa, and it's known for those viciously sharp, spiny trunks and stems, as you can see in this photo right here. And that's the trunk of the tree, and those spines can even extend out onto the branches as well. Definitely not something you want to grab hold of. It's typically a large shrub, but can be a small tree, which is why we've covered it on From the Woods Today, one of our common trees, our tree of the week. So if you want to know a lot more about it, we've got another video on that. But it is widespread throughout the eastern US, and probably the biggest issue with it is that it commonly forms these clonal thickets. So it can be really good if you want to create some kind of barrier, because it will clonally spread and make a nice big, very spiny, very impenetrable shrub type structure there. But also think about if you're running through the woods, you wouldn't want to run through that. It has really, really large leaves. They're doubly and triply compound. We call this, doubly or bipennately compound. And in this case, some of them are triply pinnately compound, and they can be up to 3 feet long. So there's some of the largest leaves of any tree in the United States. So it's a really big leaf. The devil's part of the name is evoked from that plant, the plant's thorny, really intimidating appearance. And you can see that. I mean, these aren't little bitty thorns. This is something that would definitely go through your skin easily, puncture your hand if you were to grab that. And then the walking stick part comes from, it refers to its really stout stem. And surprisingly, people have done this, but you can cut it down and strip all those thorns off of it and use it as a really nice walking stick. They tend to have very straight, not too big around trunks. So devil's walking stick. All right, so next one, this is witch hobble, and I liked it just because of its name. It's actually a lovely viburnum. It's Viburnum lentinotes, and it's a shrub that we find more in the northeast and throughout the Appalachian Mountains. So here we'd find it in far western Kentucky and far eastern Kentucky at our much higher elevations. It's really kind of more of a northern species understory shrub. It's also known as moosewood and tangle legs, and also hobblebush. But I liked it. I had learned it when I first learned it in New Hampshire as witch hobble, and it always kind of creeped me out, like thinking about trying to run through the woods, something chasing you, and you get hobbled. But it also is a thicket-forming shrub, and it's got really strong, flexible, switch-like branches. And the witch part of the name comes from the Middle English word wish, or withy is another way of another version of that, which means flexible and pliant. I mean, that refers to the branches. This is also, we see this with witch hazel as well. It's got those very flexible, pliant branches, and that is also from that wish or withy. And the hobblebush part of the name comes from the plant's that a unique growth habit where its low branches bend down to the ground and they're going to root themselves in the ground, and it creates these arched tangled thickets. So as you imagine walking along, you've got these kind of loops of branches down from the plant into the ground, and it loops again, easy to get tangled up, thus the entangling the feet of travelers or hobbling them. So not scary, but the name is kind of, yeah, always seemed kind of a little scary to me when we talked about it when we were out in the woods up in New Hampshire. Now this one does look scary. This is honey locust. We've done this as a tree of the week before, but it's Gladitsia tricanthos, and it's a rapidly growing large tree, and it's in the Fabaceae family, in the bean family, and it's easily identified, you guessed it, by those heavily thorned trunks, as you can see this right here. We find this a lot here in the inner bluegrass, but yeah, those thorns are super sharp, and they're woody and they're spiky and they're firm, and that's where the triacanthos comes from that three-pronged thorn. It's native to Central and Eastern North America. We do find it here, definitely in the inner bluegrass, in the bluegrass area of the state. And the thorns of the tree are thought to have evolved to protect the trees from browsing by Pleistocene megafauna, including mastodons. And the pulp inside the seed pod is edible, and it's kind of sweet, and it's an attractant for bees, moths, butterflies, and small mammals. And while we see this out in the woods, it is widely planted, but the thornless variety is the one that's widely planted. We see it a lot in shopping center parking lots and whatnot because it creates a relatively light shaded area. It has very small compound, it has compound leaves, but all the leaflets are small, so it allows for some sunlight to come through. Now this one's just kind of, I think this one is in fruit is kind of creepy looking, and this is white baneberry, and common name for this is doll's eye, and it's Actea pachypodia. And it gets its creepy name from its striking white berries with the black dots that resemble eyeballs. And I think this bottom picture is really good for that. It's like, whoo, that is a creepy looking plant. It is a perennial native, so it's not woody, but it is perennial, and we find it throughout Eastern North America. And the berries in all parts of this plant are highly toxic to humans. So this is something you probably wouldn't want to plant in your garden or in a landscape setting. It does have a pretty flower and nice and lovely leaves on it. But again, something to keep in mind that it is highly toxic. The berries are eaten by a variety of birds. They love them, and they spread the seed to other areas, and the birds are immune to that toxic effect of the berries, but we are not, so we wouldn't want to plant this in our yard. And here's another one. Now, this is not a native, but it's become naturalized, and it is also a poisonous plant, and that's poison hemlock, Conium maculatum, and it's like I said, non-native. It has spread throughout Kentucky. It's highly toxic to humans and livestock, and it's infamous for resembling edible plants like parsley. A lot of times people will confuse it with Queen Anne's lace too, just on a quick look. It is a biennial herbaceous weed. It's native to Europe and the Mediterranean, but it's become naturalized here, and problematic in many states have listed it as a noxious weed. Typically grows about 6 to 10 feet, and it will, once it gets in an area, if it's kind of a disturbed area, it's going to spread and take over. A lot of times you'll see it along creek banks and stuff where there's been some disturbance, but enough sunlight for it. The stems are hollow and they have small purple spots. You can see that on this top picture up here. And that's one way of helping you distinguish it from Queen Anne's lace. And its root is white fleshy taproot that has red spots, and it also resembles a parsnip or a carrot. I've never actually dug this up. I have worked in removal of this when I worked in parks. You've got to be very careful doing that. Make sure you use your PPE when you're handling this. The roots, leaves, and stems have a really foul odor when they're crushed. And then I wanted to wrap with a favorite, poison ivy, leaves of 3, let it be. We all know that saying, we learn it young. We've probably all experienced poison ivy. I have more times than I like to think. But it is in the genus Toxicodendron, and it's native to Asia and North America. And it's not a true ivy, but rather it's a member of the cashew and pistachio family in the Anacardiaceae. So it's not an ivy. That's why we spell it out like that. It is well known for causing that uretiol-induced contact dermatitis, poison ivy, which is that itchy, irritating And in a lot of cases, it's a painful rash for most people who touch it. I have met some people who say they're not allergic to it, but the rash is caused by coming in contact with that urushiol, which is that clear liquid compound in the plant sap. So you can get it from the leaves, you can get it from the stems, you can get it from the roots. So even in the winter, you can get poison ivy if you're out there digging stuff up, because poison ivy grows as a small plant. It can grow, it looks like a shrub a lot of times, and it also climbs. It's a climbing vine, which you can see in this photo right here. So if you come in contact, kind of break that root bark, or you're digging in the ground where there's poison ivy, you could get poison ivy even in the winter. But it's characterized by this cluster of leaves that contain 3 leaflets, hence again that common expression, leaves of 3, let it be. So those are just a few plants from kind of, let me stop share here, a little kind of creepy plants, or just plants to think about, kind of look at, and kind of go with the Halloween season. There's lots more out there. So yeah, go check out some of the common trees of Kentucky. Kentucky coffee tree is another one. We used that one as a Halloween tree at another episode around Halloween. So
That honey locust, man, it looked like if you ran into it, you could kill yourself.
absolutely. They said, in looking at some of the natural history of that during the Civil War, they would use those spines. They could use those to help pin things together. I mean, they're that sturdy.
Oh, my goodness. All right.
I know.
Well, thank you so much for that. We greatly
Well, happy
appreciate it.
Halloween.
Happy Halloween.
I know.
All right. Well, we really appreciated all of our guests being on, Dr. Larson telling us some creepy things that live in our forest, creepy bugs, and then talking about the Venus flytraps. That was really interesting, even though it's not here. It's, I know you can buy them in stores around here. So it was really interesting for that. And then learning about creepy trees. I hope you enjoyed this edition, a Halloween edition of From the Woods today. We always try to give you some topics that you can, take something with and learn information on. But remember, there's also a ton of wealth of information at fromthewoodstoday.com. We can always we have several shows, like over 250 shows located there on different topics. Several Dr. Larson's creepy things from the forest, because I think he's really done this for me since we've started this show. So it's been awesome. So, but we greatly appreciate you joining us each and every week. And if you have any thoughts, if you go to fromthewoodstoday.com, there's a little survey there. You can click the button and you can ask questions and say, hey, I saw this in my forest. I would like to know what this is. Just let us know, and we can try to get that on a future show, or maybe a future creepy things from our forest. So we greatly appreciate it, and happy Halloween, and we will see you all next week. Take care. Bye.
From the woods today. From the woods today.